from as far south as Willow Grove near Philly, right, to as far north as almost the Cape Cod. Do I have that right? Wasn't it a pretty good distance?
Well, all
you
over
covered
the
that
place,
day.
actually. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that,
Yeah,
Doug.
just it's a great story. Yeah.
All right. Well, I was based at Quonset Point, Rhode Island. The squadron was based there. The ships were there. The Kearsarge, the Leyte, and the Philippine Sea all had Quonset Point Naval Air Station as their home port. So the air group, of which my squadron was one part, Attack Squadron 35, was located there. All right, so on the last day of my active duty, before I decided to go to Princeton University, where I had decided, but before I actually stopped flying as a regular naval officer, I took the plane, went on a cross-country flight, and I loaded it up as much as I could with fuel, and took off, and I decided to do a cross-country flight. So the first thing I did was to fly up I flew north. I was very tempted to fly under the George Washington Bridge. I thought, well, I could do that. There's no question that I couldn't do that, but the numbers on my plane would be highly visible. Somebody would see them, call the Navy, and complain. So I decided, no, I better not fly under the George Washington Bridge. So I flew over the bridge at a decent height, flew across Hartford, and then I went over to Wellesley College. And Elise was a student at Wellesley at the time. And so I located where Wellesley was on the ground, and it was not easy to do, but I found it. And when I did, I climbed up to about 5,000 feet or so, and then I made a dive and pulled out at 1,000 feet, and thereby buzzing the campus but not getting too close. And then I pulled up, and so that anybody who was looking to find my numbers couldn't see them, I did slow rolls. So they would have a hard time making out the numbers on my plane. And I climbed back up again, and having done that, then I decided to fly down to Narragansett Bay. So I flew south from Wellesley down to Narragansett Bay, on which the Naval Air Station was located. And the Naval War College is on the opposite side of the bay in Newport. Well, I flew down there, and then I decided to see how high I could go. So I climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed until I could begin to see vapor trails off my wings. And I began to feel uneasy about that. I didn't know there was anything wrong, but I just felt uneasy that I'm pulling vapor trails now. And my altitude said about 35,500 feet. That's about as high as the airplane was capable of going, given its horsepower and given the wings and given everything. But it was a beautiful day, clear day, and from that altitude I could see all of Cape Cod stretched out, and I could see all of Long Island in the opposite side stretched out, and I couldn't make out New York City in any detail, but obviously it was a big city there, and a little bit of the North Jersey shore. It was about as high as I could push the airplane. And so having done that, I thought, wow, that's really something, but I've got full throttle, and the plane won't climb anymore. It's reached its limit in terms of horsepower and ability to climb. So I thought, well, here I am. What a fabulous view this is. And I don't know how far inland I can see because I can't tell what's there, just a horizon. So then I decided, heck, it's getting close to the time that I should go back and land. I might as well do some aerobatics that I normally wouldn't do at lower altitudes. So I began doing big loops, slow rolls, Immelman turns, and all sorts of extravagant maneuvers that you can do when you have a lot of altitude. And I did those, had great fun, and always going down, down, losing altitude gradually, while really over Narragansett Bay, way up high, and gradually losing altitude, going down, down, down. And finally I thought, well, it's about time I should head back because I'm going to run out of fuel if I don't do that. So I turned towards the Narragansett Bay Bridge, which was a major landmark, and on the flight path to get to the air station. The air station still is there functioning, but at a very reduced level. It doesn't have 3 carriers anymore. It doesn't have air groups based there. Mostly it's a place for reserve aviation. Reservists. So anyway, as I went down and down and down, I headed for the bridge and I crossed over the bridge, and I thought, you know, I am getting awfully low on fuel here. I better be careful. So I headed for the field, which is on the west side of Narragansett Bay, and then got into the traffic pattern, asked for clearance to land, and my fuel gauge was way, 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 way down. And I circled the field, I got a clearance to come in and land, and I did. I had an uneventful approach and landing, and taxied in to the flight line, and I realized my fuel is almost gone, but I had enough there for the engine to keep running, so I taxied over and parked near the hangar where our squadron was located, and shut off the engine. But before I did, I got a call on the radio. Lieutenant Miller, when you have secured your aircraft, please report to the executive officer of the air station. Interesting. Okay, yes, of course I will do that. So I secured the aircraft, and the guy on the ground crew found that the tank was almost empty. Just a tiny bit of fuel still left in it. But as he refueled it, I got out of the aircraft, went, changed my clothes to get out of my flight suit, and I got dressed up, went to the executive officer of the air station, and knocked on the door. I was let in, and here was his desk, and there was a little rug in front of his desk. I thought, isn't that something? I'm being called onto the rug, finally. And so he said, Lieutenant Miller, I was Lieutenant Junior grade actually, but he said, Lieutenant Miller, I have a report that a Navy plane was buzzing Wellesley, Massachusetts. I said, sir, I was definitely over Wellesley, Massachusetts, but never went below 1,000 feet. He said, well, that doesn't matter. If people on the ground think that you're too low, they're complaining. I said, but I wasn't too low. I was still above the FAA minimums of 1,000 feet over a populated area. But of course, to escape detection over Wellesley, I had also, once I made my zoom, I did a series of slow rolls, climbing higher and higher, so nobody could see my numbers. And they didn't, but they called the Navy to complain about a Navy plane. They could tell it was that. So I said, well, sir, I'll never do that again because today is the last day of my active duty in the Navy. So he kind of smiled. And that was the end of that. And that was my last active duty flight. But it was quite amazing. I could fly down, when I flew down to Philadelphia, I went down, before the end of all this, I flew down to Philadelphia and circled. I found our house in Mount Airy because the driveway was a little bit unique. You could see it from the sky. The driveway went in and then there was a big loop in front of a garage. And I could see that pretty well. Once I found the house, I circled it around and around, and eventually Mother, and I think Margie,
Yep, I remember that.
came out. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And you saw the plane flying around, and I waggled my wings.
Yep, you did.
So you witnessed that.
Yes, I did.
Truth will out, folks. All right, so at that point, when I knew that I was recognized, I'd never done that before. Once I was recognized in Mount Airy, I decided it's time for me to head back. back to Quonset, so I did. Anyway, that was my last active duty flight. There are other adventures I could spend time on, but
That's a good one.
that was the last time I flew an operational Navy military aircraft. After that, I flew a little bit, once in a while, in, well, actually, no, I'm wrong. When I got out, I went to Princeton University, and as a Princeton student, I joined a fighter squadron at Willow Grove Naval Air Station for weekend warrior flying. So once a month, I would spend a weekend driving over to Willow Grove Naval Air Station. I joined a fighter squadron because I thought it'd be fun to fly fighters since I'd never done that. And did that all the way through Princeton University until I graduated and went to seminary in New York City. And then it proved unfeasible to be a flyer anymore for a variety of reasons I won't elaborate here. But so eventually I lost my commission because I couldn't maintain my proficiency and my readiness and so forth. But while flying at Willow Grove Naval Air Station, I learned to fly Hellcat fighters made by Grumman called the F-6F. Those are the planes they had at the time, which were replaced shortly by Corsairs, the F-4U, and I flew that for quite a while. And in both cases, I landed both types of airplanes on aircraft carriers. We went out, flew out to sea, and did carrier landings. And then finally, the Corsairs were replaced by the first the first McDonnell Douglas jet fighter, the FH-1, which was fun to learn to fly a jet. I'd never flown a jet before. They were all propeller airplanes. And that had a whole series of experiences that I had in short flight hours that I established. Altogether, I probably accumulated throughout my Navy career about 1,100 hours of flying time, almost all of it as a pilot. But I got to fly the FH-1 at least for a little while. And I could rave on and on, but maybe there's not time for that.